Okay. How can you tell someone is American without them telling you? That's the name of this video. It's from TikTok News. It'll be linked in the description down below so you can watch it uninterrupted. I tell you what, this is going to be funny. I know it is. This one will be a little more unpredictable than some of the other ones I've been doing regarding this general topic, but I think this one's going to be really fun. Let's take a deep dive into this right now. Here we go.
American without them telling you they're American.
So I'm American, but I studied abroad in London during college, and we had like some orientation to like tell us about, what it was like studying abroad. And they said, you have to do things because people will notice that you're American. There are things that Americans do that they don't do in England, like smile at strangers on the sidewalk. And I thought, what kind of psychopath smiles at a stranger on the sidewalk? Like, why are you even telling me this? Is super weird. Fast forward, I get to London. I'm excited. I go for a walk around my neighborhood, and people keep looking at me weird. I'm like, God, these guys are kind of assholes. And then I realize I'm the psychopath smiling at strangers on the sidewalk.
That one's pretty funny. That must be subconscious. I would not rule myself out of that. I'd like to think that I keep a straight face walking along the sidewalk, but I think that is customary for, at least over here in America. I guess now I think about when we're walking around our neighborhood, everyone smiles and waves at each other. Maybe when you're downtown, like in a city environment, it's a little less common, but still somewhat common. So that must be an American thing. That is kind of funny to hear. Some of these will be familiar to me, and some of these will actually be a little bit of a learning experience. So that one, I haven't traveled the world, unfortunately, and that would probably be, on the learning side for me, that not every country doesn't mean people aren't friendly. It just means that they don't, they're not over the top friendly where they're waving and smiling at you on the sidewalk. So, that's kind of interesting.
Someone is an American without them telling you they're American.
Well, Americans, or at least the most of them, they can't drive a manual. And it's not just that, but when they find out that anyone in the world can drive one, they look at you like you're totally insane. Now, I don't know about America, but at least in most countries in Europe, you don't get a driving license if you can drive a manual. That's like basic stuff for us.
Okay, so that one definitely don't agree with, but then again, it's just my anecdote, right? So I love manuals. I've owned multiple manual transmission cars. I still own one right now. I love them. I prefer them actually to automatics. They're much more fun. They keep you more engaged. I feel safer in the manual because I'm more engaged with the road. But I will agree that in most countries, I've heard, I would think, because there's so many manual cars, more so than here, where it seems like 90% of the cars are automatics. It is cool how in other countries, I feel like, to get your license, you have to learn how to drive, period, and then also learn how to drive a manual. That makes sense. Here, it's not required. So driver's ed, or driver's education here, the one I went to, had an additional course that you could take on top of the regular course that did teach you how to drive a manual. Now, I didn't have to take it. I'm a car guy, so I knew I'd learn quick on my own, and I did. But I did not take that course, and that's exactly it. It's not mandatory. But in other countries, I assume it would be. So that's cool. But there are Americans, plenty of Americans that I know that do know how to drive a manual. But then again, I guess I chalk it up to they either had to learn for work, like certain work trucks and industrial trucks are manuals, or they were car guys and they like manuals, right? But now that I think about it, a lot of my friends who aren't like hardcore car guys, they don't know how to drive a manual. So maybe you're onto something.
How can you tell someone is an American without them telling you they're American?
So I'm actually American, but I lived overseas for like 10 plus years. I've lived in Africa and Europe, and I've been pretty much everywhere. So let me tell you how I can tell if you're an American tourist or not. One of the biggest definers is how you dress. Any man I see that's wearing cargo shorts, I immediately know is American. Also, footwear tends to be a pretty big identifier. American sneakers are pretty ugly, and lots of people don't really wear sandals overseas. Also, depending on where you are, your height can be a huge identifier. I lived in the Netherlands for 4 years, and the Dutch are a very tall people. So anyone that was 6 foot or shorter, I could kind of tell. Also, the very obvious one is Americans tend to be louder than other people. You pretty much make it known whether you want to or not because Americans have such loud voices. Also, at least in Europe, Americans tend to dress more for comfort than style. Almost 100% of my fashion sense nowadays is because I lived in Europe. Europeans dress up just to go to the grocery store.
For you.
Wow. Yeah, that one's interesting. First off, I don't know why Americans tend to be louder. That one is just kind of funny to me. I don't disagree. I feel like that could be true and probably is true in most cases. I feel like I don't know why that is. That's really weird, right? But the dressing one is interesting. I feel like that would be an interesting way to identify American. Yeah, Americans just tend, like myself, I tend to dress pretty simply, pretty comfortably. Now, there's days where I dress up more than other days, but even me dressing up is, I would assume, way less formal than some other countries' standard, days would be. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting one. But you know what? Okay, so if it's a hotter day abroad, not in America, what do you wear then? Because cargo shorts, I feel like aren't bad. It's not like we're wearing sweatpants or like athletic shorts. Like cargo shorts is a step above that, I feel like. But then what would you wear on top of that? Like, do you always wear dress pants even if it's really hot out? I don't know. That's kind of a goofy question. It's too much of a blanket statement. I can't really have you guys answer that accurately because there's too many scenarios, but hopefully you kind of get what I'm saying. I know in Australia, which is also different from a lot of the world, but also different from the U.S., they do wear sandals a lot. Of course, they have different names for them. So it's not like the U.S. is the only place that wears sandals and shorts or something, right? Australia is really hot. So I've learned that, some of them, maybe younger people there, do wear tank tops and shorts and sandals from what I've seen. Actually, a lot of them go barefoot too. So
How can you tell someone is an American without them telling you they're American?
Extremely white and functional trainers or sneakers and baseball caps.
How can you tell someone is
guilty. Never see me without it.
an American without them telling you they're American?
I was serving a table of Americans once, and they were driving down from Dublin on a motorway, and they asked us why there was a castle in the middle of the motorway and why we didn't just knock it down to put the motorway through it. The thousands-year-old castle, sure.
How can you tell
Oh, that is sad. That one I'll have to agree with the guy there. Yeah, that is ridiculous request, right? Now, granted, there are places in America where we definitely preserve history, historical sites, buildings, and so forth. But yeah, unfortunately, it's also an equally American trait to, knock something down and put up a parking lot, right? So, yeah.
tell someone is an American without them telling you they're American?
I can answer this question. I live in Paris currently, and I noticed that us Americans are very loud and excitable. Yes. So if you're like in the public touristy areas, and especially on the metro, and see a very loud group of people, 9 times out of 10, they're Americans. My current theory on why that is because Americans have a bigger personal space bubble than Europeans, so we have to yell to get the point across. Also, I don't know if this is exclusively American.
Now that's kind of a good point. That's kind of a good point. Yeah, because a lot of times Americans, unless it's your girlfriend or wife or something, right? Like you're going to be somewhat far away from the person. It's not like people aren't really shoulder to shoulder here at all, right?
But we wear a lot of graphic tees with branding on it.
Yes.
And
not me. Look at this is a cheap shirt, okay? I'm cheap. This is literally a $4 shirt from Walmart. Maybe your country where you're watching this from doesn't even have Walmart, but Walmart's good for one thing. It's good for cheap clothes. I don't like to blow $100 on a shirt. Never have, never will. So here we go.
We always get hot and take our coats off. And for some reason, the French never get hot. It could be 75 degrees and they will wear coats and scarves. And I don't know what witchcraft that is. It must be blood magic because they're fine. They're not breaking a sweat. And those mark us as great targets for grifters and scam artists.
She makes a good point there. I have seen that. Even though I haven't gotten to travel abroad, far away like that, to Europe or Asia or Australia or whatever, I have seen that just on TV. I've heard it from people's stories. My wife has gone abroad to France before. That is interesting. Basically how, people do kind of cover up a lot, even if it's sunny and generally warm out. Right? The more I think about it, say Europe, for example, I guess from what I understand, their climate doesn't get crazy, crazy hot, whereas here in America, it can get really hot. I'm in New Mexico. It can get, 110 degrees Fahrenheit here. Post-edit insert here. I just wanted to insert that I know that Europe is not a country. I know it's a bunch of countries, okay? What I meant is Europe as a whole usually isn't super hot. I know that Southern Europe is going to be more hot than parts in Northern Europe, but I wanted to state that from my experience, like the Southwest where I'm at right now in the U.S. is very, very hot. I mean, for Pete's sakes, it's only spring. It's not even summer. It's been 100 degrees multiple days. So I don't really picture a lot of Europe, scalding hot at like 105 degrees days on end, Even if it's more mild, like I wish I knew Celsius off the top of my head, like 80 degrees Fahrenheit. What would that be, like 25 degrees Celsius and sunny? That'd be a nice day. But a lot of them, I feel like that's a style to dress pretty nice. And usually that involves covering up, having long sleeves on, pants as opposed to shorts, shoes as opposed to sandals or sneakers. Yeah, it is just interesting. And Americans, that's hard to break. Like, Americans are just going to be in t-shirt and shorts. And as long as it's, like she said, 75, 80, they're going to be dressing for the warm. So
How can you tell someone
funny,
is an
right?
American without them telling you they're...
But it is also weird because damn, don't you get hot? Like, I feel like if I went outside right now, it's really warm today still. It's in the 90s. I would not want to be covered up. I feel like it'd be too hot. So I don't know.
Usually it's the clothing. It's either you can see them wearing brands that are not readily available here in Germany or in Europe, or it's a certain style, like an athleisure wear that's just not very common here. Like, even to go to the supermarket, people will still throw on a pair of jeans and a sweater, even if it's their messiest look. They'll still kind of look kind of put together, whereas you'll see someone literally shopping in their slippers. And you know that person's an American. People here tend to, kind of dress up even to go shopping. Also, volume. And I myself can be heard from at least 200 feet away when I speak. Yeah.
How can you tell someone is an American without them telling you they're American?
So, a little story time. So I used to be a waiter at a 4-star hotel near a Formula 1 circuit, and like every so often, because of the circuit, we had loads of people coming from different countries, so Japan, America, Canada, all that sort of stuff. Had some Americans come in and sit on my table. Their food was included, but their drinks were not, so they were paying for their drinks. I could tell they were American/Canadian. I couldn't tell by the full accent, but I could tell they were American as soon as they tipped, because they tipped a considerable amount compared to their actual bill price, and it was quite a bit of a shock on the actual tipping culture in America.
Question for you.
Yeah. I didn't know that one would come up, but I guess that would be an easy way to identify an American or even a Canadian for that matter. Yes, tipping is the name of the game here. It's really weird. I've covered this in different videos before, and it's kind of weird, right? I've known people that can really make out like a bandit with tips. They can actually end up getting paid pretty well. But then again, I know people that are really struggling, and service industry, especially if you're working at a nice restaurant, that can be hard work, right? You want to provide good service. You want to make the customer feel good. You want to get the right food, all these different things. You should be paid a pretty good wage. And that's the problem, is in most countries, they're paid a good wage. They don't have to rely on tips. If they get a tip at all, hey, that's great, but I don't need it, right? Whereas here, that is your lifeline. You get such, some states pay below minimum wage because it's a service job that gets tips. So they're like somehow allowed to do that. It's really weird. And it can be a hit or miss thing. And if you really think about it, your job, right? You want to pay your bills. You want to be able to live somewhere safe and stuff. You don't want to leave it up to a hit or miss, right? It's kind of weird. So that is very American culture, is tipping.
Can you tell someone is an American without them telling you they're American?
Is Hitler still your president?
How can you tell someone is an American without them telling you they're American?
Oh my God.
If I ask them where they're
I wouldn't say that's a typical American that would ask that. That's a jackass.
from and they start to
Or a
reply
troll.
with percentages, they're American. If I tell them I'm Italian and they say they're Italian too because their great grandpa was an immigrant, they're American. If they say stuff along the lines, oh, I have pizza every Saturday night, so we are the same, they're American. If they start to speak in like a mafia boss accent, like the ones from the movies, they're American. If they say
These are bad.
I went to Europe once, they're American. Because they're the only ones who don't know Europe is not just one country.
No.
If they don't understand the time on my phone, they're American.
I'm assuming for that last one, she's talking about a 24-hour clock versus a 12-hour clock. I personally actually have, our vehicle set up to read in 24-hour clock, so I would know, but I can't speak for all Americans.
How can you tell someone is an American without them telling you they're American?
Oh my god, here we go. Obnoxiously loud in public transportation. Will talk slowly to you even though you speak perfect English. Always wearing their collared sweatshirts and a baseball cap.
How can you tell someone is an American without them?
I guess I'd be screwed. Or I really have to just overcome decades of wearing a hat.
I used to work at a National Historic Site, and we get a lot of visitors from all over the world. And since this is Canada, whenever you'd interact with a visitor, you'd say hello, bonjour, giving them the choice to speak English or French. Anyway, this guy comes in, and he's got a cowboy hat on, a buttoned-up shirt that's tucked into his jeans, he has leather boots, and to top it all off, his belt has American dollar bills printed on it. So me and my coworkers did our thing. Wow. We said, oh, hello, bonjour. And instead of just saying hi and continuing on with things, he stopped in his tracks, looked at us, and said, we don't speak that funny language. Didn't clarify which language he was talking about, but I think it was French. So yeah, that's how I could tell he was American.
You tell someone is an American.
Yeah, that's a different breed of American, right?
Without them telling you they're American.
Jeez. One of the things I learned when I did my study abroad in Ireland is that the way you can tell American is American without having to hear them speak or anything is right here. Tennis shoes. Typically, white tennis shoes. I don't own any white tennis shoes, but only Americans will wear tennis shoes nonstop. Most people in Europe wear like Doc Martens or like a dress shoe that's still really comfortable. But tennis shoes, when they're not at the actual gym, nope. You stand out as an American.
How can you?
Yeah, that one's pretty interesting. Kind of like what we were covering earlier. The shoe thing too. I guess I failed to mention. I would fall guilty of that as well because I wear tennis shoes all the time. Not all the time. I actually wear cowboy boots sometimes if it's not too hot out. So lately I haven't been, but over most of the year I do. And sometimes, very rarely, especially compared to other countries, but very rarely I have worn some dress-up shoes, nice shoes like she's talking about before. But it's not often. I'll admit I wear tennis shoes or sandals a lot.
You tell someone is an American without them telling you they're American.
They ask you some stupid questions. Like, why is everything closed on Sunday in Germany? Or why do you call soccer football? Or even, why is your coffee so yellow and sparkling?
How can you tell someone is an American without them telling American?
It's actually kind of weird because we can spot you from the distance, and I'm not joking. Like, you have this aura, this glow, you glow American. American tourists are usually very loud, very excited, and in a party mode, and very outgoing. I'm from Germany, so most of the time American tourists are very drunk because you always want to try the German beer, which is great. These are all great things, but German people are usually, I'm not, but German people are usually very down to earth, like low-key, in their own little bubble, don't want to talk to strangers mode, and you're like, I want to be in your bubble, let me in your bubble, which is great, but it can be annoying. But I like American tourists, like especially on pub crawls, drinking beers with them. It's very awesome meeting them, talking to them. Americans are at the Oktoberfest, who are not.
What is the weirdest perverse in?
That's the end. So we made it to the end. Very interesting and funny, as I thought it'd be. You got to tell me your experiences down below. We get amazing comments on this video, so I really do appreciate you guys. I think I could make videos just out of the comments I get. They're amazing. So keep your stories coming. How have you spotted some Americans in the wild abroad, outside of the United States? yeah, definitely tell me down below. Leave a like, a thumbs up on this video. I do appreciate it. It will help it out. And of course, subscribe. Join our amazing community we have on this channel. It's the best. And never miss a funny video like this again either. Check out the description for this original video and other ways you can interact with my channel. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, guys. Catch you later.